Please subscribe the channel and don't forget to click the bell icon.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Botanica. So in the previous lectures we have discussed about the stomata, what is the composition of the stomata, the structure of the guard cells, and now we are going to discuss some other details like the density of the stomata, that is the number of the stomata which is different in different plants which are living in different areas or different habitats. For example, those plants which are living in a desert area and those which are living in a mesophytic area, we can say that the normal routine area where the CO2 and water is available in abundant amount, and where we are also going to discuss about the pathway of the entry of the CO2 into the plants, what is the mechanism of the entry. So first of all we are going to discuss about the stomatal density, the number of the stomata. And remember, the density of the stomata, it is a physiological process, but it is controlled genetically. So as far as the stomatal number or the stomatal frequency in the plants on the leaves are concerned, it is controlled genetically and it is determined by the genome of the plant. So the stomatal density of a leaf which may be as high as 20,000 per square centimeter. So as far as the common or the usual number of stomata on the leaf is concerned, there are about 20,000 to 22,000 stomata in one per square centimeter of a leaf under both genetic and environmental control. So as far as the leaves are concerned, as far as the stomata are concerned, they are controlled both. They are controlled by genetically, as far as we can say that they are controlled genetically, but they can also be modified environmentally. There are the adaptations. There is a genetic control. There are the genes and the proteins which are responsible for determining the number of the stomata, but there are some environmental requirements that the plant should change or should adapt themselves according to that environment. So as far as the stomatal number or the stomatal density is concerned, it is controlled genetically, but it can be or it is modified according to the environmental conditions. For example, as a result of evolution by natural selection, desert plants are genetically programmed to have lower stomatal densities than do marsh plants. So we can say that this particular phenomena, this particular characteristic is genetically controlled. Those plants which are living in the desert environment, water deficient environment, so they and high light intensity environment, they are living in the environment where the temperature is very high, so they will have a lower stomatal densities than do the or as compared to those plants which are present or which are living in an area where the water is abundant and other factors are not affecting at most to the plant growth. But in the desert environment, all these factors are very much active and they are affecting the plants, because there is extreme temperatures. In some desert there is a 50 to 55 or 60 degrees Celsius temperature at the day, and when the night falls, so about the temperature falls to zero or below zero as well. So there are both the extremes in the desert environment. There are a major, or we can say the extreme at the highest extreme and lowest extreme as well. So by the evolution, or we can say that the natural selection, the nature has selected those plants in the deserts which have lower stomatal densities in the so those plants which are in other words we can say that those plants which have low number of the stomata, they are successful in living the desert environment. So stomatal density, however, is a developmentally plastic features of many plants. So as far as the stomatal density is concerned, it is not genetically fixed. It can be modified developmentally or physiologically, or it can be modified according to the environmental needs. So it is controlled by the genetic or it is controlled by the genome, but it can be modified, so that's why we are calling it that it is a developmentally plastic feature that it can be changed according to the situation. So high light exposures and low CO2 levels during leaf development lead to increased density in many species. So this is the control of the environmental control, we can say that. So when the stomata are developing, when they are in the developmental stages, when they are not mature but they are in the developing stages, they are stomata are synthesizing. So what will happen if at the developmental stage the light exposure or the light intensity is high and the carbon dioxide level is low? So what will happen? So that development leads to the increased density in most of the species. And why the density is increased? Because of the low CO2 levels, because stomata are mostly, or we can say that CO2 exchange or the gases exchange is attributed, 95% of the gases exchange is attributed to the stomata, and this stomata will have to exchange CO2 and oxygen with the environment. And if there is a low or less CO2 in the environment, so there should be a high number of stomata, so that most of the highest CO2 or highest possible carbon dioxide should be fixed from the environment. So we have given the example here that okay, it is genetically controlled but it is modified according to the environment. So when in the last sentence we have given the example that when the stomata are in the developing stage, when the leaf is developing or the stomata are the leaf is making the stomata on its surface. So what will happen if at that time the light exposure are high and there is a low CO2 level in the environment? So it will lead to the high frequency of the stomata on that plant species. So stomatal density, however, is a developmentally plastic feature and high light intensities. So by measuring the stomatal density of leaf fossil, so it is another clue that according to the situation and according to the need, the stomatal number is also changed. So when the scientists have experimented and they have focused on the fossils of the plants which were available now, they have come to know that the insight into the levels of atmospheric CO2 in past climate. So you have studied many times and you have studied the climate change topic in your environmental biology. So what will happen that CO2 concentrations are constantly increasing in the atmosphere because of using the fuel in abundance and other factors which are also responsible for the CO2 production, and it is accumulating in the atmosphere. So in the previous 100 years, or we can say that 100 years ago or 50 years ago or 70 years ago, when the world was not industrialized, so what the concentration of CO2 was very low, and that CO2 concentration was also affecting the number of stomata we have discussed previously in the previous sentence. So on the leaf fossils, they have noticed that the CO2 level of CO2 atmosphere was low in the previous 100 or 50 years, and now it is changing. So a recent survey which is carried out in the London, or we can say that in the England, the stomatal density of many woodland species has decreased since 1927, when a similar survey was made. So a survey which was made in 1927 and they have compared that number of the stomata to now to the recent survey which is carried out in the recently. So they have come to know that in the 1927 most of the species which are present in the mesophytic area, they have decreased the stomatal number from 1927. In 1927, and this observation is consistent with other findings that atmospheric CO2 levels increased dramatically during the late 20th century. So as the CO2 levels is increasing in the environment, so there is a not need of making or developing a large number of stomata. So that's why the number of the stomata has decreased according to the situation, according to the need of the environment. So that's why we are calling it that it is the genetically controlled, but it is modified environmentally according to the need of the environment, according to the adaptation. So that was something about the control or the number of the stomata which are different in different plants, so how it is controlled. So now we are going to discuss about the diffusion, or we can say that how the carbon dioxide will enter into the leaf, what is the mechanism, what is the process. Okay, we can say that the carbon dioxide will enter into the leaf and it will be fixed, and oxygen will leave the plant into the environment. So how this particular phenomena will occur, what are the driving factors or driving forces for entering CO2 from the environment into the leaf cells. So diffusion of the carbon dioxide into the leaf through the stoma is more efficient than would be predicted on the basis of stomatal area alone. For example, if we consider that if we consider only the stomatal area, that this is the area of the stomata and CO2 will enter from this particular area to the leaf. So by considering only the stomatal area, it is not possible to explain the movement of carbon dioxide from the environment to the leaf. So what will happen? A fully stomatal pore, this is the explanation that how we can say that only not stomatal area, only the considering the stomatal area is not possible for the movement to explain the movement of carbon dioxide. So a fully open stomatal pore typically measures about 5 to 15 micrometer wide and about 20 micrometer long. So this is the dimensions, these are the dimension of the stomatal pore when it is open. So it has about 5 to 15 micrometer its width and 20 micrometer long. So its width and length is in micrometer, and we can say that when we combine the area of all the stomatal pores which are present on entire leaf surface, so they amount to not more than 0.5 to 2% of the total leaf area. So from these figures you can imagine that what is the area of the stomata on the leaf. So they are only 0.5 to 2% on the leaf. So and the entire 98% or the 95 or 99% of the other area is not covered by the stomata. So by discussing or by explaining the movement of carbon dioxide entirely simply by the stomatal area, so it is not possible. There are some other factors which are also responsible for the movement of carbon dioxide. Since leaves contain no active pumps, you have studied active transport and passive transport. Active transport or active pumps are those proteins and the pumps which are situated in the membranes, and they pump the molecules against the concentration gradient by using the energy. So leaf do not contain any of the pumps, so all of the CO2 which is taken into the leaf for photosynthesis for the Calvin cycle, it must enter by diffusion through these extremely small pores. So as far as the pathway of the movement is concerned, it is diffusion, it is not other pathway. It is not, we cannot say that there are active pumps or some other mechanism which are involving the energy. There is simply diffusion. And how that diffusion will work? One might think that diffusion through such a limited area would be extremely restricted. So okay, we are also discussing that the area, for example the 2% area, it is a restricted area, it is a very small area, and it will not be able to sufficiently exchange the carbon dioxide. But yet it has been calculated that as far as the nature and the development and the structure of the stomata is concerned, it is very efficient for the carbon dioxide uptake. So according to the calculation, that rate of the carbon dioxide uptake by an actively photosynthesizing leaf may approach 70% of the rate over an absorbing surface with an area equivalent to that of the entire leaf. So these are the figures, these are the calculation that when we are going to compare the leaf surface and the transport of carbon dioxide, so it exceeds or it is more than 70%. So it tells us about that carbon dioxide stomata are very efficient in the transport of carbon dioxide. So how is a high concentration gradient for CO2 established and maintained? So okay, we are calling it, or we are saying it, that the diffusion is responsible for the movement of carbon dioxide into the leaf. So what is the gradient? For the diffusion there should be a steep concentration gradient. There will be the movement of molecule will be from higher to lower concentration gradient. So how that concentration gradient is maintained, or how that concentration gradient is formed? To ensure a constant diffusion of CO2 from the air into the leaf, the CO2 concentration within the substomatal cavity and leaf air spaces must be less than the CO2 concentration in the air above the leaf. So it is quite understandable, for the diffusion to occur there should be a concentration gradient. There should be a difference in the concentration of the molecule. So that concentration gradient, or that difference in the concentration of the carbon dioxide, it should be maintained according as to the environment. So there should be a high concentration of CO2 in the environment which is directly linked to the leaf, and there should be a very low concentration of CO2 in the intercellular spaces or the substomatal cavity, so that CO2 must enter efficiently from the higher concentration to the lower concentration. So this CO2 concentration gradient is established. So as far as this CO2 the concentration gradient is concerned, it is established because in the light, so when there is a light, chloroplast is able to fix carbon dioxide in the Calvin cycle, and that carbon dioxide will shall continuously convert gaseous CO2 into a stable non-gaseous molecule, which is the 3-phosphoglycerate, through the reductive pentose phosphate cycle, which we call as the Calvin cycle. So when there is an active photosynthesis, carbon dioxide from the intercellular spaces is continuously diffusing into the chloroplast, and the chloroplast, the Calvin cycle is in process, and that Calvin cycle is responsible for fixing that CO2, or we can say that CO2 is constantly used by the Calvin cycle, constantly used by the chloroplast, and CO2 is converted directly into the PGA, which is a non-gaseous compound, and it is a stable compound. So there is a utilization of CO2 in the chloroplast, so that CO2 which is present in the intercellular spaces, it is constantly being taken up by the chloroplast, and it is used and it is fixed in the form of a phosphoglyceric acid. So thus this biochemical cycle constantly removes CO2 from the intercellular air spaces. So as this particular CO2 is removed constantly from the intercellular spaces, there will be a low concentration of the CO2 in the intercellular spaces, and which will result in the steep concentration gradient in the environment and with those intercellular spaces which are responsible for the exchange of gases, thereby ensuring that the internal leaf CO2 concentration is less than the ambient CO2 concentration in the light. So in the light, what will happen? There will be a low CO2 concentration because CO2 is constantly being used by the chloroplast. So by using that CO2, there will be a concentration gradient, that there will be a less CO2 in the leaf and there will be a more CO2 concentration in the environment. So CO2 will enter from the environment into the leaf. But what will happen at the night or in the dark? Photosynthesis stops. So there will be a no utilization of, mostly there is a no utilization of the CO2, but respiration which is taking place in the plants, there it will generate the CO2, such as that the internal leaf CO2 concentrations are greater than the ambient CO2 concentration in the environment. So these are the opposite phenomena in the day and in the night. So what happens in the night? Respiration is constantly taking place and it is evolving the CO2, and because of that CO2 there is a greater CO2 concentration in the plant as compared to the environment. So what will happen? CO2 from the plant, it will diffuses out of the leaf and it will go into the environment. So the rate of CO2 evolution from a leaf in the dark is a measure of a rate of leaf mitochondrial respiration. So as far as the calculating the rate of respiration is concerned, we can calculate the rate of respiration in the plant by calculating the CO2 which is being evolved from the leaf in the dark. So that CO2, by measuring that CO2, we can calculate the rate of